Spooky, lie down. Spooky, lie down. Spooky, lie down. Spooky, lie down. Good boy, good boy. Hey, what is up everyone? Welcome back to another Gunpla review, and today I'm taking a look at this absolute monstrosity, this monolithic piece of plastic right here. And of course, this right here is the high-grade Neo Zeong narrative version. Once again, this review right here, as well as any other p-bandai review, would not be possible without those awesome proxy people over at BUYEE. So if you're looking for some p-bandai or rare, hard-to-get Gunpla of your own, then check out that link right now down in the description. Now let's get to this. So right there is a quick overview of everything that comes in the box, and I have to say this thing would never fit in frame with my usual background, so it might be a little bit hard to see here, but I'll stick things in behind it later on so it's a little bit clearer. But that right there is absolutely everything that comes in the box. That's the Sinanju itself, as well as all the stuff that came in the high-grade Sinanju box before, also including some extra weapons for the Sinanju, and there's the Neo Zeong itself. There aren't necessarily a whole lot of actual options for the Neo Zeong besides these little hand cannon things back here, but there are some leftover parts I'll talk about in a little while. So first off, I'm going to get the Sinanju style narrative version out of the way because it is exactly what I saw before. So if you want a more in-depth view of what this guy right here is like, it's an absolutely fantastic high-grade kit. Really, really good. But if you really do want to see more about that, you can check out my review. But besides what we saw with that kit, there are a couple of extras in here for the Sinanju, which include 2 bazookas. In the standard box, we only got the 1, so in here we have 2. We also have 2 of the beam rifle. This time around, they don't have that jacket on the outside like we saw with the last one. So these are more like the standard Sinanju, the red Sinanju's beam rifles. Of course, they are in brown like a lot of the parts of the Sinanju Stein are. If you're curious, you can build a standard version of one of these rifles because the jacket section is included on the runners, which are all from the previous kit from the Sinanju Stein. Because it's got 2 bazookas and it's got 2 beam rifles, that means they have included a left hand for holding triggered weapons. So that is a standard holding hand with a trigger finger, so it can dual wield both the rifles as well as the bazookas. As for the close range weapons we get in here, we have that standard set of beam sabers. We saw these once already, so I'm not going to go through them again. Once again, if you want to check out the Sinanju style narrative review for more details on that kit, feel free. Besides those 2 beam sabers, what we've got unique in here is the large beam axe. We've got 2 of these. The effect parts we're using with these are what we've seen before with the standard version of the Sinanju, that's the red one. So they can slot on just like this. We've got this little adapter part which attaches them both together to make the beam naginata. Lastly, as for the things that come for the Sinanju itself, we've got that shield, which we saw before, as well as this grenade launcher. Once again, we saw that before. So once again, and this is the last time I'm going to mention it, if you do want to see more on the aesthetics of this kit, more on the articulation, etc., then you can check out that other review. But for now, we're moving right on into that massive Neo Zeong. So first off, we've got to get Sinanju in there. So in order to do that, you just pop up this front section here, pop off these side sections that are on the sides, of course. It just slides in between this T-shaped bar. This is basically what's holding the whole thing together. This is what's holding the arms onto the torso. And you have to hand it to that bit of plastic. It does a great job. But anyway, it slides in there like so. Put those little side sections back on, clip down the front, and there you go. Sinanju is in there. So there is an overview of what this thing looks like, and it is colossal. This thing is ridiculously big. As far as I know, this is the biggest Gunpla that exists. Correct me if I'm wrong. If there's something bigger, let me know, but as far as I know, and from this picture you can see right here, it does dwarf the Dendrobium, which I don't actually have. As for some other size comparisons, there it is compared to a standard high grade, that is the Narrative Gundam B packs, and you can see it just makes that look so minuscule. This thing is gargantuan. Next up there is the Master Grade Granddaddy Gundam, and as you can see, this thing even makes a Master Grade looks like it is absolutely tiny. I'll throw another bigger Master Grade in there, that is the Master Grade Sazabi Verka, and still you can see, this thing is huge. So now working through the grades, and here it is side by side with a perfect grade, and it even dwarfs that. This right here is the perfect grade Exia lighting mode, and for a lot of people, a perfect grade is one of the biggest models they have in their collection, and this thing is so much bigger than that. And finally, there it is beside the Mega Size Unicorn Gundam. Of course, Mega Size is the largest scale Gundam figure that you can get. That's 1/48th scale, and even this is dwarfed by the Neo Zeong. Until the Neo Zeong, I would have said this is probably the biggest thing I had in my collection, but not anymore. And I almost forgot, this is another one of the biggest kits that I have. Of course, that's the Master Grade Deep Striker. Throw that in there as well, just to see the size difference. And what can I say, the Neo Zeong is huge. Actually, it's so huge that you might want to think when you're considering buying this or not, do you have the space for it or somewhere to put it? Because, honestly, I almost didn't. From now on, I'm just going to be always sitting right underneath this monster of a kit. It's just above where my editing PC is, so it's just a big, foreboding, awesome sight to look up at. Also, I will mention the weight. This thing is around 8 kilos in weight. It is extremely, extremely heavy, and that little acetate pipe going up its butt, when I pulled it out of the box first, I thought this is extremely, extremely strong, but the minute you've got this kit built on it and you're moving it around while holding the base, it feels really flimsy. The extreme weight on such a small little pole does feel like, well, you don't want to shake it around too much. Most of the time, those big fuel tanks will be touching the ground, taking up some of that weight, supporting it a bit, but I do recommend not moving it around too much. And finally, for the last size comparison, there it is beside a fully grown Siberian Husky. So as for the aesthetics on this thing, it looks absolutely phenomenal. Of course, this is a variant of the Neo Zeong that came out a few years ago, the one in that full frontal red. This one has a few changes compared to that one, which I'll talk about in a minute. But all in all, structurally, it's pretty similar to what we would have seen before. It's got those huge, spiked, crazy shoulders, massive cannon arms, 4 extra massive cannon arms on the back, some of the craziest skirting armor I've ever seen, as well as the hugest butt flap. Underneath, we've got a bunch of massive verniers. The fuel tanks are absolutely huge, with more verniers in the bottom of this. And all in all, this thing looks so crazy awesome. So of course, the biggest difference between this and the previously released version is the color. This right here is in a white, as they say, but it's more of an off-white towards grey. A very, very, very light grey. So it's grey, dark grey, navy blue with some red, some of that Sinanju Stein brown. And while I talk about the red, there are meant to be some red sections here. Of course, these are stickers. This section is not color accurate. And speaking of the color accuracy, of course, the biggest issue is the red sections that you can see right here that are missing off those front parts, as well as these big circular stickers that are for color correcting the orange and black on all of these plug sections up on the shoulders and on the waists. So of course the biggest difference between this and the standard version, the old red Neo Zeong, is the color. That's the biggest difference, obviously, but besides that we've got a bunch of physical differences too, mainly up around here on the shoulders. So all the front section of the shoulders has been removed, we've got these red sections inside of those, and of course the cannons that were in the shoulders and the waist units have been removed and replaced with these little plug sections. It is worth mentioning though that all of these parts are included on the runners, so you can build yourself a white version of the original Neo Zeong. I'm absolutely crippled with a backlog right now, so I'm not going to, so here's a picture I stole off the internet. And lastly, when it comes to the aesthetic aspects of this, we do also get a massive, huge sheet of water slide decals in here. Mine did get a little bit creased in the box because there's a hell of a lot of stuff in this box. Nothing that has damaged any of the stickers though. But all in all, that is one hell of a sheet of transfers. Some of these are for the Sinanju as well, so those particular decals for the Sinanju Stein narrative version aren't available anywhere but here. So now moving into the accessories we've got for the Neo Zeong itself, and there isn't really a whole lot in here. What we have here are these 4 cannon sections for on the arms that are attached round on the back of this thing. These of course are the wired large funnel bits for firing those wired funnels, and when they're not in use they can be kept down here on the base, and when they are in use can be just popped on just like so. I did use these to test the God Hand. I will be doing a review of the God Hand nipper sometime in the future, but you do have to do a lot of snipping out right here. We have 6 arms worth of these things, and they're made up of 11 parts each, so cutting these out and filing them out can be a real pain in the head. So it was a good test for the God Hand. Can I just cut through them all using this and avoid cleanup? The short answer is, kinda. But that review will be coming up sometime in the future. Besides that, we do have these little pieces here which are for using with the Psycho Shard. This is not included and has to be bought separately. Also p-bandai. I don't happen to have one, so I can't exactly show you what that looks like, but I will throw up a picture so you can see what it will look like if you have that combined with the Neo Zeong. One of the coolest aspects about this kit is you can store some of Sinanju's weapons in under these armor sections. When you pop them off, the rifles can slide into these little hook sections. You can pull these parts out, attach them onto the large beam axes, then store the beam axes in there, then cover them all up. Pretty cool. The shield can be stored round here on the back, just popping onto this little peg behind the Sinanju. As for the bazookas, you have the option of putting them into Sinanju's hands, or sliding off the larger barrels and sliding those barrels into these little holes up here, just like so. So lastly then, moving on to the articulation, and the articulation wouldn't be this kit's strongest point. It's definitely more of a display piece than anything else. So from the tanks up to the waist unit, there's pretty much nothing. It's all static. At the waist, it can rotate ever so slightly. Very minute twist there. It's the arms that has the majority of the articulation in here, so that is the twist here at the, well, wrist I guess, the bend at the elbow, it can rotate up here at the upper arm, they can move in and out ever so slightly, as well as all the way back and all the way forward, so still quite limited, that articulation right there. Around in the back we've got those 4 extra arms, probably one of the coolest aspects of this kit. All of these can rotate, pull them out to access that same elbow articulation we saw on the front arms, and if you have these cannon sections attached, those can rotate. As for the last bit of articulation, these little sections up here on the shoulders, those can pull out like so, but once again this is part of using the Psycho Shard, but they do look pretty cool open, but without that little expansion set, there isn't really a whole lot of point. I absolutely almost forgot we also have this little black pole for using with the base. This is just like the big acetate one, but this is for using with the kit to display it with the stern boosters purged. They come off pretty easily, but attaching this to the base is a little bit time consuming. Basically, you need to take the whole Neo Zeong off, take this section out of the base, you're going to need a screwdriver here, unscrew that, take out the acetate pole, put in the little black pole, screw that all back in again, pop that back into the base, take off those stern boosters, that's what it looks like from underneath without them, and then pop it onto the base. Personally, I love those big fuel tanks. They add so much mass and awesomeness to this kit. So for me anyway, this is the way I'm going to display it. And the very last thing I'm going to do in this review, because I know someone is going to ask, and that is the question, does the narrative Gundam B packs fit in this thing? So let's find out. So that is it for the review, and honestly, I can't even rank this thing. It is so unique. It is like nothing else. Well, besides the standard version of the Neo Zeong, that is. So I'm not actually going to give this a tier award. So one thing you might be wondering about is the build of this thing. Personally, I thought this was going to be one hell of a job, that this was going to be the Mount Everest of Gunpla, but it wasn't really. It was actually really simple and really fast. The only difficult aspect is micromanaging the amount of runners this thing comes on. But all of those runners don't have a whole lot of parts because the parts are huge. I found once I got a bit of a system for keeping the runners organized, I got through it in absolutely no time whatsoever. It took me 2 sittings of maybe about 3 to 4 hours, and that was it. Perfect grades have taken me way longer than this. All the parts are big, the build is essentially quite remedial, and again the only real issue is keeping on top of that runner mountain. But all in all, don't let this thing scare you, it's a fun, simple build. It does not feel like a high grade, but then again, it does not feel like any grade. This is something completely unique. If you think you've built everything when it comes to Gunpla and you have not built any version of the Neo Zeong, I'd say that is the next thing you need to build. It's absolutely and utterly unique, and even though it is quite simple when it comes to detail, intricacies, gimmicks, etc., it really is just eye candy. It's huge, massive, awesome looking, and will not go unnoticed in your collection. It's gonna dwarf anything else. Personally, I think it is awesome, and it is on that shelf to stay. I love this thing. If you do want one of your own, there is a link down there in the description. You can get one through BUYEE. As always, thank you so much for watching. Make sure to come back for more Gunpla reviews, and I'll see you next time.